What's up, Smite fans? Wraithyn here, and I am back with another how-to guide. This time, we're taking a step back into the jungle with the Demon King of Lanka, Ravana. Ravana is one of the best and most versatile junglers in the entire game. He's ability-based, has two forms of CC immunity, a leap, and fantastic utility. While he can be played in a variety of roles, including solo and support, the jungle is the best place for him as he has great gank potential and can fill a variety of roles in a teamfight. Let's get started and dig right into his abilities, starting with the passive. Ravana gets a health shield after 8 autos and a little movement speed. Honestly, I hardly notice it, and it's barely even worth mentioning. As for the actual abilities, first up is the 1 Piranha Onslaught. This is Ravana's basic bread and butter damaging ability and is a very simple cone AoE in front of him that does massive damage. It's on a low cooldown to begin with, and with just a little bit of CDR, becomes incredibly effective in team fights as you have it up pretty much every few seconds. The 2 Overhead Kick is even less interesting and is really used for CC and damage immunity when you know you're about to eat a stun or a large ability. This ability is also solid as a finishing move if you really need that last bit of extra range damage to take someone out, but for the most part you should hold on to it as a last resort as kind of a second beads plus Aegis. Come on boys, can you? This is particularly useful when ganking as you can plan out to avoid the CC of the other player when attacking. Alright, moving on to the 3, the 10-hand Shadow Fist. This is the second most important damaging ability for Ravana. This ability does a bunch of damage, gives him a small heal, and roots the enemy in place. This ability does, however, have a far longer cooldown than the 1, so you need to be very strategic with how you use it. Make sure you're going to hit it when you fire it. More to come on that later. Lastly, the ultimate Mystic Rush is pretty much just a really long-range leap that does an insane amount of damage, increases the damage that the target takes from all sources by 10%. Think like Spear of the Magus or Upgraded Sunder. It also reduces the damage that he takes by up to 30% mitigation. The primary utility of this ability here is as a chase tool because the leap and animation time is almost exactly the same as every other dash and or leap in the game except for Scylla and Chiron ult, I think, or an upgraded Thoth. This means you can bait out leaps and dashes and chase absolutely perfectly with Ravana's ult. All right, let's keep it going. Leveling order of these abilities. There's kind of 2 schools of thought here. I prefer the first one, so let's run through it. I personally like to start and max the 1, ult, 3, and 2 in that order. I prefer this order for a couple reasons. Number 1, having your 1 maxed out early is super helpful for clearing camps and can help you gain a lead over the enemy team, especially since it's on such a short cooldown. This should be the first ability you max no matter what you do. I follow this with the ult because the ult does insane damage, and if you're good about how you gank, you can almost always reliably hit it. When I can't put points into the ult, I level the 3 for the increased damage and healing. I never really find myself longing for the shorter cooldown on the 2, because most of the time when you need that extra CC and damage immunity, it's not until later in the game anyway when you'll have leveled it up as it is. Try! The second school of thought, and this is actually the opinion of a lot of pro players, so take what I say with a grain of salt, is to level the 1, then the 2, then the ult, then the 3, favoring the drastically reduced cooldown on the 2. The 2 and 3 have similar damage, so try out both of these options and figure out what works best for you. Also, please, I don't care if you're used to it or not, put the 1, 2, and 3 on instant cast. It's a giant cone and 2 straight lines. You should be able to hit that without having to line it up with a targeter. This makes a huge difference in how quickly you're able to get Ravana's abilities off and is going to lead to you bursting people down much better. Get used to it. If you're on console, hit the start button, go to abilities, and then you can change the cast time and type of each ability right there live. If you're on PC, you just press the K button and do the same thing. All right, next up is how to gank and what the preferred combo is. Ravana's actually fairly easy to pull off what I call textbook ganks, as his kit is basically built to negate the mobility and self-peel of your targets. There are a few tricks and pointers that need to be said, as I see a lot of Ravana players utilizing his kit extremely poorly. First things first, do not, under any circumstances, use your 3 to start a fight with a target that has a dash. The root only lasts 1.25 seconds and is completely wasted on a target like an Anhur that will leap away and be free to move. Really common mistake here. If I root an Anhur and he leaps, my root still applies to him, but by the time he lands out of his leap, he is free to move and run away. either walk up to or blink onto an enemy carry and use your one in a few autos. The carry will then have to make a decision to either use their escape or try to self-peel with an ability. Think an Uller Axe or On Her Pin, based on whether or not they turn the camera towards you or if they turn away from you. If they try to self-peel, get ready to 2. If they turn to leap, get ready to ult. Do not wait for them to land their leap to ult or their dash or whatever it is. Just turn in the same direction and fire. You basically go the same distance as them, and their leap or dash is basically giving you an opportunity to confirm your ult's damage in your entire kit, as you're almost guaranteed to land on top of them with very few exceptions. After this, you either 2 their self-peel, let's say On Her didn't try and pin you when you blinked, or root them with the 3 and use your 1 again, which should have come off cooldown at this point. It's very simple and a great way to pull off a gank. Conversely, for an immobile character like a mage or a hunter like AMC, I like to walk up to them or blink on them, use my 1 to slow them, and then confirm the damage of my 3. Basically, if they're slowed with my 1, it's easier to hit my 3. And then once they're rooted, the second that they're rooted, I immediately up down with my ult onto my feet to get my damage off while they are stuck in place. I still like to hold my 2 for self-peel in case there's a Tusky Boar or something else that's going to come flying my way. Play around with it, but that's pretty much the best way to gank a target in my experience. As for the mid-game and teamfight phase, Ravana can really play a variety of roles, which is kind of what I alluded to earlier. I prefer him personally as a semi-tanky bruiser brawler that either initiates or joins fights shortly after they start. With the damage mitigation on his ult, a little protection goes a long way, and it allows him to get into the backline and mix it up with the carries and mages without worrying about if the enemy team's damage output is going to put him in the dirt. Between the mitigations, the protections, and his 2, initiating with Ravana is a great way to bait out the enemy team's damage safely and turn the fight for your team. That said, honestly, you can run full damage on him and use the 30% mitigation of his ult as your prots, but I've always felt that the hybrid bruiser build is the way to go. Speaking of builds, let's get into my favorite build path. Again, like I mentioned earlier, Ravana is all about variety. You can pretty much do whatever you want, so don't feel like you're stuck doing one thing or another. Figure out what works for you. This is just an example of what I like. Ravana has relatively solid base damage, so you don't need a ton of power to yeet someone off the map. He does just fine with a little bit of power, prots, and health. I like to start my typical tier 1 mace and Assassin's Blessing and go Warrior Tabby, and then either into a Crushers or a Brawlers if they have a lot of healing. From here, you're going to want to pick up the Sledge for power, health, mana, prots, and 20% crowd control reduction. That item is so busted. It's an unreal hybrid item and one of my favorites right now. Next up, I like to pick up Void Shield for the power, health, and prots and the 15% prot reduction passive. All around great item, helps your team out, helps you out. Next up is my favorite niche item, and in my opinion, one of the most criminally underpurchased items in the game, Ancile. Ancile gives you power, prots, 10% CDR, and an AoE silence passive for when you dive mages or a guardian tries to turn and peel you. Try to fit this item into your bruiser builds and let me know what you think. I personally think it's one of the best utility items out there. Next up is Erendite. You can actually swap this out with the Onsile if you feel like you want to do more damage or you don't need the cooldown and magic defense quite yet. Erendite is tons of power, cooldown. The passive on it's amazing for chasing down characters. And then lastly, I trade my Heartseeker for boots. Trade my Heartseeker for boots. Trade my Heartseeker for boots, for boots, for boots, for boots. This gives you a fair amount of prots, health, and power with 30% CDR with a red pot and quite a bit of penetration. Trust me, you'll love this build. Bit of a warning, do not ever build Hydras on Ravana. The extra power is wasted. Ravana's first auto after using an ability only does 75% of his basic attack damage, meaning the extra 40% you get off of the Hydra's passive is a very small number. You can always tell who a noob Ravana is by whether or not they build this item. It's basically like building Mystic Mail on Kumba. Don't do it. Well, that's it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Ravana is one of my pocket picks, and in my opinion, is the best god for newer junglers that are just starting out. His kit's easy to understand. He has great utility. He does fantastic damage, and you can flex him into whatever role you need from him. Let me know in the comments section if this was helpful for you and who you'd like to see me do next. As always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'm always open to feedback from people who love playing the gods that I do.